to declare, in its excellent Greek, that the African consumed his food in just the carrion, scarfing way one might expect of the bastard offspring of a bald-pated vulture and a Barbary ape. For a moment, after the insult was hurled, the African went on eating, without looking up from the shatranj board, indeed, without seeming to have heard the remark at all. Then, before anyone quite understood that calumny so fine went beyond the powers even of the mynah, and that the bird was innocent, this once, of slander, the African reached his left hand into his right buskin, and in a continuous gesture as fluid and unbroken as that by which a falconer looses his fatal darling into the sky, produced a shard of bright Arab steel, its crude hilt swaddled in strips of hide, and sent it hunting across the benches. Neither the beardless stripling who was sitting just to the right of its victim, nor the one-eyed mahout who was the stripling's companion, would ever forget the dagger's keening as it stung the air. With the sound of a letter being sliced open by an impatient hand, it tore through the crown of the wide-brimmed black hat worn by the victim, a fair-haired scarecrow from some fog-bound land who had ridden in that afternoon on the Tiflis road. He was a slight, thin-shanked fellow, gloomy of countenance, white as tallow, his hair falling in two golden curtains on either side of his long face. There was a rattling twang like that of an arrow striking a tree. The hat flew off the scarecrow's head as if registering his surprise, and stuck to a post of the daub wall behind him as he let loose an outlandish syllable in the roomy jargon of his homeland. In the fireplace, a glowing castle of embers subsided to ash. The mahout heard the iron ticking of a kettle on the boil in the kitchen. The benches squeaked, and travelers spat in anticipation of a fight. The Frankish scarecrow slipped out from under his impaled hat and unfolded himself one limb at a time, running his fingers along the parting in his yellow hair. He looked from the African to the hat and back. His cloak, trousers, hose, and boots were all black, in sharp contrast with the pallor of his soft hands and the glints of golden whisker on his chin and cheeks. And if he was not a priest, then he must, thought the mahout, for whom a knowledge of men was a necessary corollary to an understanding of elephants, be a physician or an exegete of moldering texts. The Frank folded his arms over his bony chest and stood taking the African's measure along the rule of his bony nose. He wore an arch smile and held his head at an angle meant to signify a weary, half-amusement like that which plagued a philosophical man when he contemplated this vain human show. But it was apparent to the old mahout, even with his one eye, that the scarecrow was furious over the injury to his hat. His funereal clothes were of rich stuff, free of travel stains, suggesting that he maintained their appearance and his own with fierce determination. The Frank reached two long fingers and a thumb into the wound in his hat, grimaced, and with difficulty jerked out the dagger from the post. He turned the freed hat in his hands, suppressing the urge to stroke it, it seemed to the mahout, the way he himself would stroke the stubbled croup of a beloved dam as she expired. With an air of incalculable gravity, as if confiding the icon of a household god, the Frank passed the hat to the stripling and carried the dagger across the room to the African, who had long since returned to his bowl of stew. "I believe, sir," the Frank informed the African, speaking again in good Byzantine Greek, "that you have mislaid the implement required for the cleaning of your hooves." The Frank jabbed the point of the dagger down into the table beside the shatranj board, jostling the pieces. "If I am mistaken as to the actual nature of your lower extremities, I beg you to join me in the courtyard of this house, at your leisure, but preferably soon, so that, with the pedagogical instrument of your choice, you may educate me." The Frank waited. The one-eyed mahout and the stripling, wondering, waited. By the door to the inn-yard where the ostler leaned, whispered odds were laid and taken, and the mahout heard the clink of coins and the squeak of a chalk wielded by the ostler, a span who disdained the distinction between turning a profit from seeing to the comfort of his guests and that of turning one from watching them die. "I'm sorry to report," the African said, rising to his feet, his head